Welcome, welcome. Doors are open and we are gathering. All right, Temple, here we go.
And so welcome everyone. I'm Temple Hayes and I'm delighted to be the host for Association of Global New Thought to honor this amazing Interfaith Awareness Week. And I'm fortunate that I have a co-host named the one and only Mendhi Audlin. And I'm just so grateful that she's here. And right now we are so fortunate that we just happen to have the founders of Interfaith Awareness Week, the amazing Reverend Stephen Albert and his beloved wife, Abigail. So please give us a clap on the screen. We're delighted that you are here with us. It's such an honor that we are featuring Association of Global New Thought in this 2-hour window with amazing leaders and luminaries and powerful people and singers. We have got an amazing experience for you, that's for sure. Before we get started, though, as your vibration is percolating, we're going to share with you a video so you will know about the amazing work of Interfaith Awareness Week. And we'll play that now. Thank you, Mendhi, for your help.
Yes. All right. Well, here we go. I'm going to share that first video. And here we go.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the 6th Annual Interfaith Awareness Week. My name is Reverend Dr. Steve Albert, and I'm the director of the World Interfaith Network. Interfaith Awareness Week is a yearly, week-long celebration begun by the Poway Interfaith team in Poway, California. In 2017, Point, as it's known, has members throughout San Diego County, and we hosted a 5-day NAIN Connect conference in the San Diego area. We held it at the University of California in San Diego, and it attracted over 250 people from 20 different faiths. 77 speakers and presenters provided workshops, lectures, discussions, morning meditations, activities, which included bus trips to historic faith locations, concert in the park, and lots of food. While planning the conference, we contacted the mayors of the cities throughout San Diego County about creating that second week in August during the conference as Interfaith Awareness Week, and to do it in their city. And believe it or not, 14 city mayors and the San Diego County Board of Supervisors proclaimed Interfaith Awareness Week as a time in which we honor and respect all faiths, cultures, creeds, and races, and seek to learn from those who believe equal spiritual opportunity and human rights belong to all people. 1 year later, in 2018, the governor of the state of California proclaimed Interfaith Awareness Week as an annual state celebration. And then 1 year after that, in 2019, the United Religions Initiative asked if they could celebrate the second week in August with us. And their members are located in over 107 countries. Wow, so what we will be celebrating and participating in this coming week will truly be a global celebration. Well, that's the history of Interfaith Awareness Week. Now we need to move forward into this week's activities and introduce you to the over 40 interfaith groups which will be presenting prayers, music, dance, speaker panels, dialogues, and discussions from their area of the world. I know that you'll enjoy meeting new friends from different faith and cultural backgrounds and appreciate the mutual respect they all have for one another as we unite our interfaith partners globally. And each noontime, Monday through Friday, don't miss the 1 hour global talk zone. The talk zones is where you can meet and interact with interfaith people from all over the world and introduce the new programs that you're working on. Perhaps you'll learn new practices to help you develop the final product. You may even be invited to collaborate on a virtual event and even be on a panel elsewhere in the world. By joining forces with interfaith groups throughout the world, your events will become richer and attract more people. Oh, by the way, if you get hungry or need a cup of coffee or something to eat during, between, or after the many sessions, any hour of the day or night, you can visit our virtual Interfaith Awareness Week cafeteria. Whether you want coffee, a snack, a full breakfast, lunch, or dinner, link your computer's browser to the site shown and grab an IAW food tray. Then go back and select what you want to eat and drink, copy them one at a time and paste them into your tray. Make sure you save the tray for a souvenir. All virtual food is sugar-free, calorie-free, gluten-free, kosher, and halal. So come back anytime during the week, 24/7. So now I'm going to turn the program over to the next presentation.
And so thank you so much. And wow, it just goes to show that a person can have a nudge, a spiritual nudge, and a calling, and it's all there ready to be realized. So our love and shout out and thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Steve, and your beloved Abigail that walks hand in hand with all that you do. And thank you for the invitation for a satiation of global new thought to be part of this and to feature some of the great individuals that are walking this earth today. And we are all reassured that the world's a better place because they are in it. But before we listen to some of the incredible leaders and teachers, I'd like to share with you as we honor our beloved Dr. Barbara Fields, who, let's face it, is the worker bee and the energy behind the Association of Global New Thought. She's the reason, really, that it's known all over the world, and yet she likes to take a back seat. Imagine that. Talk about an ego that's in check, yes? But it was important that we mention to you about the Season for Nonviolence with the Association of Global New Thought. This exemplary commitment of task force leaders and volunteers, the Season for Nonviolence began, if you can believe it, in 1998. It has attained unanticipated goals with a 64-day educational, media, and grassroots campaign inspired by the 50th and 30th memorial anniversaries of Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The 25th anniversary of the Gandhi King Season for Nonviolence in 2022 marked this revolutionary initiative. The Season for Nonviolence represents a successful new model called omni-local spiritual activism. And you will witness that today through song and through our speakers and teachers, is that they are all talking about their passion, about how they address violence and that word itself. Arun Gandhi and his sister, who were instrumental, along with the Association of Global New Thought, of starting the Season for Nonviolence. He said very clearly, often when people think about violence, they think about, oh, well, I would never hurt anybody, or, oh, I don't even own a gun, or they think about the extremity and the sometimes, the bully and those kind of things. But yet there are the subtle levels of violence when we don't speak, when it would be important, when we don't address the elderly, or when we don't talk about everyday thought solutions that make a difference. And we are going to feature them today. This 1998 launch of the Season for Nonviolence has been honored by presidents. It has launched in its day in the very beginning at the United Nations. His Holiness Dalai Lama also acknowledges it as an incredible thing. It is in many, many different countries. People from all over the world do it without any religious or spiritual experiences or involvement. They still do it at libraries, women clubs, and all those things. So we honor the path of the Season for Nonviolence, and we are so grateful that we have it and that we are in 67 countries in all 50 US states. And who knows from here where it will go. The rest can be up to seeing us put the fire behind it, knowing that it will continue to grow and continue to expand. Our first speaker of the day is someone that has been noted in her time as one of the top 50 speakers on the globe. And to know her is to get her, is to want to model her, Reverend Dr. Heather Shea. And she is sharing her gifts and her talents with us. I have known her for many years, and she is a core of divine groundedness. Welcome, Reverend Dr. Heather Shea. Thank you for being with us and giving us your gifts.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really delighted to be here today. It is a real privilege to be here as part of Interfaith Awareness Week. I just feel like I should run to the cafeteria and get some snacks and probably a cup of coffee and come back and invite you to do that. But in the meantime, since I've got about 10 minutes, I'm going to invite you on a journey. And this really began when Temple said to me, and Reverend Doctor has said to me, we'd like you to join us for this conversation around the season of nonviolence. And I was really excited to join today. And then I thought, violence? My topic is not violence. My topic is peace. And it's also the arts. And I was thinking about it, and we started kidding about it. Some of you may remember from the show Saturday Night Live, there was a segment on violence in media and the issues regarding violence. And the commentator was very upset because violence is so important and music is so important. It is so inspiring to others. And of course, she was at one point realized they were talking about violence and the issues related to violence. And she was really talking about the value of the arts. And so I wanted to talk today about the value of the arts, and particularly as it relates to leadership, spirituality, and healing. And just come on a journey as setting this time up. And much of this but I want to re-engage you. And I was just on the call a few minutes ago about community and how important the arts are in our local community and our global and our cosmic community. So a few years back, I was working with the American composer, some of you may know, Wynton Marsalis. We're working on a book around leadership. And as part of it, I was doing some research around the definition of music. And I came across something by Claude Debussy that was music is the space between notes. Isn't that lovely? Music is the space between notes. So in essence, it really is the sound of silence, if you think about it. And I never had thought about that before. You can't have sound and music without peace and silence. And when you look at silence, we're going to be listening to silence. And when you take a closer look to silence and listening, if you sort of do a dyslexic inverted thing, is actually made up of the letters silence and listening. So they're very much connected. So again, thank you for joining me on this brief journey. As faith leaders and people in this world, you know the importance of leadership and music in leadership. And as Temple was just mentioning, that music can be used for aggression, for violence, for war, for bringing people together, for aggressive behavior. Also, it can be used for love, for harmony, for celebration. We're going to be using it today. We've been using it throughout the week to bring people together, to bring people to their core. And in interfaith, we know the world's great religions and traditions are at their very core the arts, whether it's spoken word, dance, music. When you think about our religions and traditions, they are all incorporating the arts in some way. And what this is really is man's connection to the divine and trying to connect to the divine for divine peace. It transcends any culture, it transcends languages. And that's where, Steve, you were talking about this being a global conference, that by bringing the world traditions together in many ways, through the meditations, through the conversations, it's really a commonality of the core human experience. You know, for years, I co-hosted a show on Unity Radio. And each month we explored a different world tradition or a different religion. And it was very fun. And as part of that, especially when we had a live audience, we would have music from that tradition. And during that time, I was astounded when you start listening to the music of different traditions, what you can hear, the different instruments, the different sounds, whether it's, you know, gongs or bowls or flutes or drums or whatever it is. And the variety and the impact. And what was fascinating to me is not just the variety and the magnificentness of it all, was watching the audience. And regardless of the religion, watching the impact on the audience and how it really touched people's soul. And inspired us, this is a former time, to bring in the community. And we brought in from around the community, the different groups, the different religious groups, whether it was the local Catholic church or the Jewish, the synagogue. We had Latter-day Saints, we had the choir. So we had quite an assortment. It was a full day event. And with that, we brought in these different types of musicians and songs and people. And with that, we also brought in the community. And what was fascinating was for this day, within our audience, we had people from all religions and all walks of life. And we had people from the community that had maybe never walked into one of those religious presences, but came to bring their families to share this experience of music and celebration. And what was interesting about this for us is how happy and joyous and collected it was, and what a sense of community we had from bringing these groups together. And we don't do that. I know the Parliament, we bring together world traditions and celebration and music. And it's just wonderful to see the commonality. And what was most interesting was also, these are people who lived within blocks of each other for years or lifetimes, who had never met each other or certainly had never been in the room and had an opportunity to be together. So music and the arts have an ability, as you know, to transcend and bring peace. Plato said, music is a moral law. It gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and gaiety to life. He also said it's an inward place of the soul. And I love that, of bringing an inward place to the soul. Mother Teresa added, God is a friend of silence. We need silence to be able to touch souls. So when we're looking at divinity and the quality of thought, we know that the divinity resonates with us. And the closer that we are to the divine, the closer that we are to ourselves and the community and gratitude. And it helps in the whole healing process, and more music is being used in the healing process. And I was interested recently, it made sense that sound and sense is the first sense that you get when you're born, and it's also the last sense that we lose when we die. And as many of you know, there's more and more research being done now around the science of healing. We've known it, and shamans and healers have known it for years, the impact of sound on healing. So more and more, there's over 400 recent articles that really showing evidence that if people listen to music, it can reduce tension, anger, fatigue, anxiety, depression. There's more work being now done around aging and the impact of music and frequencies. One of the words that I've heard recently, and many of you have heard, is this concept of entrainment. Entrainment's kind of a recent buzzword, being in, the brain being entrained, and then the brain being entrained with the heart, and everything being trained with each other, and then being trained with the cosmos. And so this coming together, and I love definitions. So I looked up, what is entrainment? So entrainment is a temporal locking process in which one's systems, motion, or signal frequency entrains the frequency of another system. Okay, that still confused me a little bit, but it had something to do with systems, motions, frequently, and being entrained. Another definition that I love about entrainment was entrainment is about being on a train together. And with music and with connecting to meditation, to prayer, to sound, we are all become on a train together. And entrained in terms of our heart, our thinking, our frequencies, and our connectedness across cultures. So I love this idea of being on a train together. And again, very much what we're doing in Interfaith Week and what we're doing in our work is putting people on a train together and finding other ways to move ahead in our own paths, but vibrating at the same time. So I'd just like to take a minute, because I think we have about a minute left. Is that right? About a minute or two left. And just ask you, and we are on mute, so which is good, which is fine, is just to take a moment, and I'd love to hear your divine sound, and whether it's an ah or an om, just make a sound and then go into the sound of silence for yourself. So if you would just do this with me for a minute or so, just go om or ah. And what I'd like you to do is I would like you to feel your sound, and I would like you to feel and fill up with your divine sound, and not only to listen, but listen in a different way. And listen with your senses. See the sound. It's like when we see auras, we sometimes don't see them, but when we look closely, we see them. See the sound waves. What's pulsing within you. See the cosmic vibrations that are within you, and start looking at that and start listening and looking at your own vibrations, but how they are intertwined as above and below with the divine. Just take a moment in this busy day to really connect with that energy. Yourself, and it's all entrained. We are all together going through this incredible path together, intertwined physically, psychologically, biologically, cosmically, spiritually. And I'd like you to come back now just to this particular group, people who are on this particular Zoom call, and just connect for a moment in love and gratitude. And just notice how peaceful it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Heather Shea. Please tell, you've blessed us today. Please tell us where to find you. What is your website that we can reach you and stay in touch?
Sure. I'm at everydayknowings.com. My work is working with organizations and people to help them really connect to who they are and what they already know about themselves, and bring that out in new ways.
Thank you so much. And thank you for taking
Thank
the
you
time
all.
to be with us. And thank you for putting us on the love train. Oh, yeah. Well, our next thought leader is a mover and shaker. I remember when we had him at the community that I once served, and it was like the floor was shaking, the internet was, the thunderbolt and lightning was going off, and it's like, who was that guy? Wow, what a force. It's my pleasure to introduce you to, if you haven't heard of him already, the one and only Mark Anthony Lord.
Thank you, Temple. Thank you for having me here. Thank you all for organizing this. It's an honor. Thank you. So I take a moment to ask the Holy Spirit to flow through me as the perfect message that is wanted. And I ask that the hearts and minds be open to receive whatever is here for them. Take what works and leave the rest. What I feel inspired to talk about today is really the practice that consumes me, that guides me, and the decision that led me to focus pretty much solely on this practice. The decision that became clear to me was simply, the world I see is the world in me. And that's, for a lot of people, a nice idea. But when it transcends nice idea and it becomes an absolute truth, capital T, with no negotiations and with no exceptions, the world I see is the world in me. The whole spiritual game becomes flipped over, different, personal, empowered, and a game that truly will make a difference. Because I believe one of my great teachers and loves in my life is my brother Jesus. And I believe he walked in his incarnation, literally seeing the world as his opportunity, as the reflection. Everyone he saw the truth. He saw the beloved. He saw God in every single one of them, which is why he could say, pick up your mat and walk. Hey, man, you're not dead. Get up and move. He was able to do that because he knew God was life and only life, and that's all that there was. This knowing and seeing a suffering world that was not changing, no matter how good the good people were doing and the bad was going, it was not changing. So it caused me to go into a deep meditation and say, why? What am I doing? What must I do? What can I do that will make a difference? And it became very clear. Heal your mind. Heal your mind of every belief and every false idea and every attack thought. Let your mind be single focused on peace, and then look upon the world, and then ask, what do you want me to do? You see, the problem is that the mind has a trick. It's able to project. It's able to make the illusion that the suffering, the guilt, the shame, the attack, the hatred is out there in someone else. And then the collective illusion says, let's find one person or that group or that team and point at them and say, well, if they would change, then the world would be better. If this ism would disappear, then everything will be okay. But as I looked at that, I just kept on thinking, but if that were true, then it would be done. How many wars do we need? How much charity do we need? How many organizations do we need? What is not working? And every single time I wanted to point to the world to find it, my God, my spirit said, look within, look within. You see, I've had some tremendous miracles in my life, and I'm unapologetic about them because I know I need to speak about them. And one of them that I want to share quickly was that I was sexually abused as a child, one of the worst offenses, one of the things that people want ended in the world, one of the most horrific things. And it was horrible to me. And it impacted my teenage years. It impacted my 20s. I became an addict. I almost killed myself because of the effects of that abuse. That abuse also sent me down the path of seeking God with my whole heart. That abuse also led me to some of the most amazing people who helped me. That abuse led me to new thought. That abuse led me to the hunger within me to know that there's so much more than what we see with our human eye. I had been working and struggling and going to therapy, and I was studying at Agape International Spiritual Center with Michael Beckwith, and I was becoming a practitioner, and I was working with my spiritual practitioner one day, and I was talking about this story and the pain of it and how it was haunting my experience in life. And she said, "Do you want to be free?" And I said, "Absolutely." Like, what a stupid question. That's what my head said. And she said, "Will you forgive it?" And I said, "I've tried forgiveness. I've done this. I've done that." And she's like, "Will you forgive it?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "I don't even know what you mean, but yes, yes." So she spoke a prayer. She spoke a prayer of forgiveness being done unto me. She spoke a prayer that activated the mystical power of forgiveness that none of us do. She asked that forgiveness be done in my favor. And she held me in this space. This was on a Thursday. The very next day, I was working as a choreographer and director in the world, and I was being flown to Chicago to look at a script that I was being considered for. And we're doing this table read, and the whole show, which I hadn't read prior, I should have, but I didn't, was all about sexual abuse and suicide. And I'm sitting at the table and I'm shaking on the inside. It's all getting triggered again. I'm like, oh, God bless it. Here I am again, triggered. So I get through the weekend. I get on the plane to fly home back to LA. I sit in my seat on the plane. I remember it's by the window. I put my sunglasses on so I could look away as the tears start coming down my face. I'm like, God, I ask for forgiveness, set me free. Please, please help me here. And suddenly, it was like God grabbed me and pulled me out of the story and said, look at this, how I see it. And the whole thing became light dancing with light. It was light with light. And I was told that's all that's happening. And the story, the experience, was forgiven and kind of put into this crystal ball and thrown out of my consciousness. I was told it would never harm me again. It was done. It had served its purpose. And I would only remember it and recall it for reasons such as this, to teach and to inspire. I saw what was really happening in back of all the overlays of suffering, all the lies of separation, all the things that humanity continues to argue with and fight with and point at. I saw the kingdom of heaven that is available right here, right now, in this mystical moment for those who have eyes to see and those who have ears to hear. But those eyes to see, we first have to have the human eye scraped of the scales through the practice of forgiveness. We have to have our ears transformed to hear the inner voice of God instead of listening to the noise of the illusion. Forgiveness was what did that. And forgiveness became my practice and the drum I beat. And the more I did it, the more I realized that everything I see is inside of me. And I believe that the world needs that. Yes, march with your signs. Yes, make a difference. But if we're even 1 ounce of our activity is coming from there doing something wrong, something's wrong over there. If there's 1 ounce of my judgment in the equation of my movement, then I have learned that I am still contributing to the problem. And, it says the path gets narrow. And what it means is it's true. Less and less people want to do this kind of what's the word? Myopic, that very specific, deep work of continuing to take ownership, continuing to do the work within ourselves. But I don't know that I don't believe there's another answer. I wish there were another answer. I wish we could find it out there in the world. I wish we could believe that form on form creates solution. Form on form isn't the worst thing in the world, but it isn't the greatest gift that we can give. So I believe what is being called forth in this very aggressive world, which I see along with you, is those spiritual warriors who are really willing to become the Christ, those ones that are really willing to not go, wow, that guy Jesus was really cool. He was able to heal the sick. But to instead take the words that say, this and greater things shall you do. I'm really deeply interested in that. I'm deeply interested, but this is what's required for this and greater things will I do. What's required is the sense of I to be dissolved. There is no separate I. And that's trippy, but I've only got 12 minutes to go as deep as I can go. I was meditating a couple weeks ago on this truth, and suddenly the whole world went, and it came up inside of me. And it was like, there's nothing out there. There's literally nothing out there. And surprisingly, I just started laughing. I started laughing, and it was tickling me at the depth of my being. And I swear I laughed for like 15 minutes. I was rolling on the floor in this absolute amazing laughter because it was like the cosmic joke was revealed to me. There's nothing out there. And we're either going to get that and we're going to actually operate in this truth, or we're going to keep going, yeah, but let's try to fix what's out there. The next day, I'm meditating, trying to find there's nothing out there because I thought that was a pretty cool experience. And the whole world that had been contracted into my mind then reversed its projection, and it went like the Big Bang sort of thing. It just exploded into its pieces. And I was all of it. I was every single piece, from the glass to the rocks, to the sand, to the trees, to the people. Like it was all me looking back at me. This is the mystical truth that lives in every single one of us. And this mystical truth is like waiting, just patiently waiting, encoded in every single one of us to name it, to claim it, and to have dissolved everything but it. And it's interesting because there's a paradox. We die, it's true, we lose ourselves, we die to the self so that the God self can rise up and be revealed. And the ego says, oh, well, I'll die. But even that is the lie that keeps us seeking out there in the world, because there is no I. There is the capital identity, capital I am. And when you center yourself in the I am, you will realize that all sense of otherness dissolves, and somehow you are all that is. It's the most amazing, beautiful paradox. And from there, I believe we then can say, use me, put a mark, put a sign in my hands, walk me down the street, take me to where I will be of service, but only, God, only move me from love and only help me see you in everyone, because I don't want to contribute one drop of additional suffering to the already broken story of suffering. So that's my experience. That's what I'm working on. Forgiveness is the way that gets us there. And I pray you found something in that will serve you today. Thank you all for letting me be here.
Of course we did. Of course we did. And you're at markanthonylord.com, yes?
.me.
markanthonylord.me.
Me, yes.
Bless you.
Temple.
Thank you so much for your contribution. So grateful. So grateful. You know, Alvin Toffler said that the illiterate of the 21st century are not the people that cannot read or write. It's the people that have difficulty learning, unlearning, and relearning. And I wanted to invite someone that I've been following for many years to join us in the Association of Global New Thought Conversations, because one of the ways that we talk about societal abuse and or violence in its subtlety and in its profoundness is towards our misunderstanding about age, aging, and our elder. Minx Boren, welcome to the club. I'm so glad that you're here today.
I'm glad to be here. I'm so glad I came on early and got to hear everybody. This
It's
is
an amazing
wonderful.
group of people, isn't it? It's
It definitely
amazing
is.
group of people. And then you and I have been in many, many open-hearted conversations through the years about a tagline we heard probably 25 years ago is "Don't let age be your cage." And I know that you took that literally as I did, and it's a number, and we do whatever, whether it's nutrition or mindset or consciousness or whatever it is, vibration, to make sure that people are always surprised when we say the number that we actually are. But you have gone a lot further and deeper into the arena of supporting elder populations. You've been on many boards, you've helped people across the nation and the globe, not only with your writing, but your conversations and your talks about gusto and grit and showing up for life, ready to go with a drum roll, please. Tell us about you and the work you've been involved in and being a difference maker.
So I think where I will begin in this short time is to speak about a book that I wrote or wrote itself through me, because I think that's what happens, just 2 years ago. And it's called Decades of Gratitude, Gusto, Grit, and Grace. Because now I was turning 75 at the time, I'm now 77. And what I found was that to enter into this time of life with passion and energy, there were four qualities that had taken me through all that. And they were gratitude, gusto, grit when you need it, and grace in both senses of the word, our own grace and the grace that comes from way beyond us, and being open to that. Last year, I was diagnosed and went through a cancer journey, interestingly. And in the process, my question was never why me, because why not me? I'm part of the human condition and this can happen to anyone. But who do I want to be? How do I want to show up through this? With no guarantees. I knew nothing at the beginning. I just knew it was going to be an interesting journey. I have lots of background in nutrition and all kinds of wellness practices and spiritual practices, but you still have to make it through the day, one day at a time. So it's like, okay, I get to walk my talk. I get to see if all this stuff that I've been doing and believing and sharing with others really works. And so my commitment to myself was to go through each day, through the surgeries, through the things that went wrong with the surgeries, through whatever, with all the gratitude, gusto, grit, and grace that I could muster. And in this conversation that has to do with violence or nonviolence, my intention was to be extraordinarily nonviolent toward myself, to love myself. Remember years ago in your shaman work, a long time ago surgery, you and I were singing, I will love myself. I will, what is it? I am a child of the universe. We are one together. I chanted that again all the way through this journey. And now here I am, it's a year later. I'm now speaking actually this week to a group that takes care of elders on the whole concept of resilience and what it means to be resilient and to tap into your own resilience. And I want to go back to what Reverend Dr. Shea was saying, because she was talking about silence and listening. And one of the points I want to make in that is the way we tend to be violent is by not listening. We cut people off. We ask a question and we answer it before they have a chance to even get two sentences in. There's a sign that sits on my desk as a coach that says, why am I talking? Because if I've done a really good job with a client, I've asked a really great question and I should be able to shut up for 10 minutes and let them process that question. They don't need to hear from me. They need to hear from their soul. It's the same reason why I teach journaling, writing. I've written, 25 books or something like that. And when you journal, you get silent. You let your soul speak onto the page and you allow yourself to discover that. So when with elders, I like the word elders versus youngers. I love the idea of just inviting them, share their story, share their journey, share their wisdom, and just shut up and let them speak. That's the most nonviolent thing you can do.
I love that. And that just like, I could feel the, just on the Zoom, the heads nodding and stuff like that. And you make such a strong point. Well, many, but the one that I went, that I like grabbed my breath was when you were talking about the violence against yourself. And that is often something that's so necessary for people to understand, especially those of us that are in thought and new thought thinking about our bodies and our physical being and the way we use our mind and the way we affirm and the way we pray. What do you mean something's wrong with me? What do you mean I have a thing or a knot or a bump or I dare you, And that can be such a violent nature against yourself. And though you said that, it's so profound about that, because in order to have the true healing about anything, it is about that gentleness. It is about accepting this is what's so, and therefore I shall discover the greatness, the vibration, the consciousness within me to overcome it. But as long as there's that tug of war, I can't believe I have this. Why do I have that? Why do I have that? It is turning on oneself. And thank you for that, because that is just so profound how you frame that.
How we frame anything determines how we will live into it. What's the story we're going to make up about it? It's all a story. Am I a victim, or am I being invited into a new opportunity, just a new journey? Out of this has come my longtime publisher is now working with me to write a book on resilience, from diagnosis to determination to deep healing. That's my next book.
Well, they've chosen well. They've chosen well because of all the people that I know as I've watched, because you're, 13 years ahead of me, and I take notes on everything you do. So I'm 40 and Minx is 53. Let's just clear that. But it's so true. And it's setting a vision, so that you will always walk, whoever you are, that you will walk in a path that your age that you are is the right one at the time. And it is phenomenal. And I know sometimes we have sat together and envisioned the next future 10 years. Minx, you and I have done that many times. And when I was 50, I went, when I'm 60, people are going to come up to me on the street and say, where do you get so much energy? I just don't know how you do it. And that happened. And it happens now because I set that intention. And you do that too, as you're going to enter into another incremental 10 years. And I know that you will lead and be a role model in that. You are such a blessing. And it is such a wonderful thing to know you. And where do we find you, Minx? How do we stay in touch with you?
CoachMinx.com.
CoachMinx.com. Thank you for being a gift to this planet.
Thank you.
Namaste. And now we have a wonderful musical duo. They have been writing New Thoughts songs for years. They've written music for Reba McEntire. They are incredible. Stowe Good. That would be Stowe Dailey and Karen Taylor Good. And they address the aging process. We welcome them with an open heart.
If you are a woman of a certain age, like me, and you also have trouble sometimes accepting that woman in the mirror, this song might speak to you too. There's something familiar about her. It might be the eyes. I catch a glimpse of her beauty whenever she smiles. But mostly all I see is staring back at me, helplessly facing the changes. The mirror doesn't lie, trying not to cry, seeing all that time rearranges. Help me love her. Help me love her. Help me see that she's still me. If she were somebody else, I could easily say, I look at all you've been through, and I'm truly amazed. I'd give that girl a break, for heaven's sake. Stop trying to change her. I'd wake up every day, look into her face, give the grace that I give a stranger. Help me love her, love her. Help me love her. Help me see that she's still me. She'll be with me until the end. Maybe I should make her my friend. Help me love her. Help me love her. Help me see that she's still me. Lovely human, precious me.
Wow, it's so powerful, so very powerful. I'm just so moved by everyone that's joining us today and the messages and the lessons. And I'm so glad we have this recorded. And I'm glad that my amazing co-host, Mendhi Audlin, is doing all the behind the scenes, because what a gift it is. And I get to stay in my heart a lot and just witness this. When we talk about AG&T, when we talk about the Association of Global New Thought, many of you may be aware it was such a blessing, because another power that is in healing is the word validation. And often likened to what Minx was saying, when you validate with power, when you put a frame around something with your own understanding, it's where the healing really begins. If somebody could just say, oh, I understand, I've had that too. And you go, wow, I thought it was just me. The power of validation. We have been a New Thought organization since the 1800s, and even before then, but it was called something different, and probably much less with the intention of being organized. But in 2015, many of us were at the Parliament of the World Religions, and we were named at the Parliament as the New Thought being an actual religion. Oh my goodness. Let's give a big clap for that, because what power is in that we are one of those on the team. Actually, many of us feel we're the leading edge of the team, but that's a different program for a different time. That being said, speaking of Season for Nonviolence, we thought you would enjoy seeing a little bit of the history and how it came about. And you're going to see some of our friends, including our president, Michael B. Beckwith, and you'll recognize him looking very different back in the day.
War doesn't just happen. It's a road traveled in small steps. Peace also happens in small steps. Worldwide, groups have banded together in the Season for Nonviolence to teach people how to apply the philosophies of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. What road will you take? It's your world.
Say and be what you want to see.
We are all interdependent and interconnected. And when we appreciate that, then we can create the true peace that exists in our heart.
Working as a co-founder with Arun Gandhi of the M.K. Gandhi Institute for Nonviolence, the Association for Global New Thought is the official convener of the Gandhi and King, a Season for Nonviolence. The 64-day period between January 30th and April 4th in 1998 commemorated the 50th and 30th memorial anniversaries of these legendary peacemakers. Launched and closed at the United Nations, the season empowered the formation of task forces to implement over 300 programs and projects in nonviolence in 115 cities since inception.
At Margaret T. Hance Park, supporters began an international 64-day grassroots campaign inspired by today's 50th anniversary of the death of India leader Mahatma Gandhi.
Peace or nonviolence is a dynamic, active quality that translates itself into a way of life.
Tranquility of the heart, where hearts meet together.
We must practice and we must teach. Seasons of Nonviolence allows you to do that day by day by day.
This message, I think, is far more important today than it has ever been before.
On behalf of the youth, I think we genuinely need guardians because the community of elders have so much experience and so much wisdom, and we have the energy. So the combination, I think, would bring out miracles.
The belief that minds and morals are more powerful than missiles and money is a revolutionary proposition.
Calling us for
motion with drops in one ocean. Roll on. Will you rise up with me today? Lift up your voice and boldly say, we are the ones we've been waiting for. Live the dream of your highest calling. Be the hope of a new day dawning. We're the ones who can make a difference. Let's stand together. Share your gifts with the world that's waiting for a change that we're all creating. It's a moment for our greatness. Let's stand together now. One dream, one voice, one heart, one word, one dream, one voice, one heart, one word. Stand together. One dream, one voice, one heart, one word. Stand together. Live the dream of your highest calling. Be the hope of a new day dawning. We're the ones who can make a difference. Let's stand together. Yeah, yeah. Share your gifts with the world that's waiting for a change that we're all creating. It's a moment for our greatness. Let's stand together now. Stand together. Live the dream. Be the hope. Share your gifts. Stand together now. Share your gifts with the world that's waiting for a change that we're all creating. It's a moment for our greatness. Let's stand together now. Stand together. Live the dream. Be the hope. We're the ones who can make the difference. Let's stand together now. Stand together.
Very, very powerful video, and giving a lot of you that are watching it to know more about the organization. When we think about change agents, we think about violence in so many ways, as we mentioned earlier, whether it's age or whether it's energy or the absence of where we're just surrounded by noise. We also think about the power of recovery. And I know that one way too well, of recovery. It's my pleasure to introduce TJ Woodward.
Thank you, Reverend Temple. I am just filled with so much love right now and gratitude for all the speakers and the music and that incredible video, and so honored to share with you. And I was reflecting today on what wanted to emerge in this conversation. And what showed up for me, it's kind of surprisingly, was a meme that I recently saw on social media. And it was a person standing in front of a crowd. And the person said, "Who wants change?" And everyone raised their hand. And then the person said, "Who wants to change?" And no hands went up. And that's really what I want to share, is my own journey of shifting from wanting the world to change to recognizing the shift that happens within me, moving toward peace and being peace. Lao Tzu instructed us 2,500 years ago of something that was so profound and yet so simple. And that is, the greatest gift we can offer the world is that of our own transformation. And when I came into New Thought in 1988, I was probably still in diapers, right, Simple? But I was very young. When I came into New Thought in 1988, this idea of changing your thinking and changing your life was so profound for me. And so I set out on a course of trying to change the narrative in my mind. And in part, I was also wanting to change the world. And I was really set out on a course of the world needs to change so that I can be at peace. And there was a profound shift that happened for me. And if I'm going to be honest and transparent, which I definitely want to be with you, it wasn't until I was 40, after 20 years of trying to change my thinking and change the world, that I came to something that is so simple and yet so profound. And it really is so much of what Mark Anthony Lord shared. And that is, the world is happening as me. I am literally holding the projector. And my third book, my recent book, is called Conscious Creation. And I want to share a little bit about the process that I've created around conscious creation. And it starts with the knowing that I am holding a projector and projecting onto the world. And Byron Katie says it so beautifully. If we are holding the projector and there is a piece of lint on the lens at which we're looking at life through, we will see that lint everywhere and think it's happening in the world. And so if I'm holding a frequency about myself, which to me is related to thought and yet a little different, which is really what I want to dive into. And that is the difference between change your thinking, change your life, which we often hear, to tune into a different frequency and recognize that then we radiate that frequency into the world, and we start seeing peace when we recognize that that's the truth of who and what we are. And so there are people who say that violence is innate to humans, that we are by our very nature violent beings. And I spent plenty of years debating that. But what I want to say today is, okay, and in addition to that, love is the truth of who and what we are. And both of those hold a frequency, and both of those exist as a potential. Quantum mechanics is now showing us what mystics have been teaching us for 2,500 or 3,000 years, and that is the observer has a profound effect. And so if my piece of lint that could be represented by a thought, a belief, an idea, a judgment, a situation in my life that I haven't made peace with, a core false belief I'm holding about myself and the world, I will literally see it everywhere. And as quantum mechanics is showing us, when I hold a belief or a frequency, I will see that everywhere in the world. And so simply, it's when we do an experiment, a scientific experiment, the observer has a profound effect because what they discovered is so profound. And that is, if I'm looking for a particular outcome in this experiment, there is a higher probability that we will experience that outcome. And so that sounds really interesting and maybe provocative, and maybe sounds like something really wonderful that we want to try on. And as we lean into that and look at the deeper awareness there, we recognize that when I'm tuning into the frequency of peace, I will see it everywhere. We talk a lot in our culture now about the law of attraction. Change your thinking, hold a thought in mind, and you will attract situations to match that thought. And what we're shifting into now is shifting from the law of attraction to the law of radiance. A recognition, if you're of a certain age, you remember radio, right? Old-fashioned radio, where you would turn the dial. And I remember being a young child and thinking, how is this possible? You turn the dial and a different song comes on, a different narrator comes on, a different story, if you will. And I was mesmerized by what's floating around? What are the particles happening around me in this room that when you tune it into a certain frequency, you hear that song? And so using this as a metaphor or a way of living, actually, we recognize that when we tune into a frequency that exists within us, whether that's violence, judgment, a core false belief I'm holding about myself, or love, my essential beingness, a deeper reality that we each came into this world as a particle of divinity, and that is the root, the core of each of us. It's who and what we are beyond any idea that the mind could create. And when I understood this more than just a concept, but as a way of being, I came to recognize that it's not about changing my thoughts. Now, that kind of flies in the face of a lot of what we have been taught in New Thought: change your thinking, change your life. What if, rather than that, I could recognize that I'm holding the projector, and when I tune into the frequency of love, I see it everywhere. And so being able to consciously create my life and consciously create a world that works for all begins by looking at what in my past I need to move beyond, make peace with. What are the core false beliefs that I'm holding about myself and the world that I need to overcome in order to be still enough to listen to inner wisdom, to create a life deeply committed to listening to inner wisdom and to that still small voice? And one thing I want to say, and this is, my time is coming to an end, but what I want to talk about briefly in closing is spiritual activism. And that is, what am I standing for versus what am I standing against? And when we think of activism a lot, or even when we think about nonviolence, we often think we want to stand against violence. And my question is, what is that creating? And what happens when I stand in a greater reality? What happens when I recognize that my projection of what's happening in the world is literally that? And when I have a surrender, the ultimate surrender is really surrendering to that greater reality, that I'm holding the projector and that I'm seeing myself everywhere. And not just are we all interconnected, but indeed we're all actually one. There's nothing happening outside of me. It's only my projection of that. And as I heal my own, as Temple loves to say, woundology, as I heal that and I return to my true nature, which is love, then I recognize that I'm here to radiate that. I can stand for peace rather than against violence. And then everything changes. So in closing, what I want to offer is very simple. You came into this world as a whole and perfect spiritual being. There is a place within you that is unharmed and unharmable. Regardless of what has happened, you do have the ability to tune into this frequency of love and radiate it. In my experience, life is a great experiment. So I'm inviting you to take the call, as so many of us have. And that call is not a call to action only. It starts with the frequency. I tune into the frequency of my essential beingness. Love is who and what I am. We radiate that out into the world and watch the effect. Then the greatest paradox is we're not here to change the world, and suddenly our world changes. To me, that's really the only way we're ever going to move beyond the seeming division that's happening, because there is a greater reality, and that reality is our oneness. So incredibly delighted to be here. Thank you, Temple, for the invitation. Peace and blessings, everyone.
Oh, thank you so much, TJ, for your frequency of love. And we can go to either website or both. So what if you tell us what they are, TJ?
tjwoodward.com is probably the best place. And I also didn't really talk about conscious recovery, but consciousrecovery.com is my movement about how we can start to view and treat addiction in a very different way.
And that you've done. Thank you so much. Bless you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Another incredible thought leader. She travels from place to place. She also lives in Italy, and she drops in Florida and California, and you just go, wow, I'm a better person because I've been in her consciousness. And that would be the incredible Reverend Christie Hardwick.
I have the privilege and opportunity to work with leaders almost every day. I work with leaders in the nonprofit sector and the for-profit sector, with leaders who are mostly on the front lines of human rights issues for the Jewish community, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community, the Black community, women, all of the areas that my heart is called to serve in. And I serve through these leaders who are leading organizations and leading movements in order to wake us up to a new idea. One of the ways that I utilize the teachings of New Thought in my coaching practice is not to actually give people the same words and to point them to the Science of Mind magazine or point them to Paramahansa Yogananda or point them to the Course in Miracles. Sometimes I do. But mostly, I talk to them about their own inner life and how that inner life affects and projects what their leadership is going to be. So many leaders that I've spoken with, when I first ask them something simple like, where's your joy? On a scale of 0 to 10, your joy meter. And not only do they not have a place that they think it is, they actually have a perplexed expression. Joy? I hadn't really thought about that. I hadn't really considered my joy as having anything to do with my leadership. And when we talk a little bit about the way they are being, without using the words about vibration, without using the words about consciousness, because sometimes people can hear that and sometimes they can't. But the way they're being, I remind them that when you walk into a room and someone has been arguing with someone else, you feel something, right? If people have been loving and embracing, you feel something. And in that same way, as they walk into rooms as leaders, people feel something. They're broadcasting something, how they're being. And that beingness comes from what they're constantly thinking about. So what I help leaders do sometimes is reveal what's happening in that bubble over their head, right? The idea of, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done right. I can't trust people to keep my standards. I'm concerned we don't have the right skills. Whatever that thought is, that idea of a vibration of energy that they feel that's broadcast comes across, even if you don't say those things, even if you come into the room with different words. So as I work with these leaders, excuse me, I think about how can I translate what we do in New Thought, the way that we tap into a knowingness that there is a greater thing in which we live and that lives in us. What I do is I test anything that I'm thinking about teaching or sharing with a leader with those who don't have the same amount of resources or access or ease or grace that some of us have in our work and in our life. I have a wonderful friend and colleague who's in Nigeria, and she doesn't know when she's going to have electricity, let alone an internet connection, to do her work in the world, which is to help people with disabilities become full citizens in their countries, to be noticed, to be seen, to be cared for, to be included. So when I'm teaching something and talking about this idea of consciousness or this idea of the context or the prevailing thoughts that you have and how those drive your beingness and ultimately what you choose to do, if it doesn't sit with her, excuse me, if it doesn't sit with her, and if it can't be applied to her situation with her resources, then I rethink what it is that I'm sharing. Because our teaching is not useful if it only works for those of us who are sitting in places of privilege and opportunity and fully resourced. It works if my friend in Nigeria and another colleague that's in another part of the African continent and a colleague that's in India can apply what we're talking about to the circumstances that they're actually faced with right then. We can talk about prosperity consciousness, we can talk about the abundance of the universe, and we need to be able to find the path that speaks to people who cannot see it right now. And so leaders who have tapped into their own inner wealth have the opportunity to see this more than those who have not. And I have tested this with people who are in varying circumstances, and that inner wealth, that inner landscape, that inner abundance serves everyone, regardless of the circumstances that are outside. We know this to be so, but it's not a bad idea to sometimes test with people who have different circumstances than our own. And in the movements I work in, I'm also noticing something else about leadership. Leaders are being called right now to listen with deep compassion. The generation of young people right now in corporations, for-profit and not-for-profit, are demanding a more just world. And they're demanding it now. And sometimes what's happening is our leaders will resist and say it can't be done that fast, it can't be done that way. But one of the things that we can do is be present for what's possible and remain open to that possibility and listen to what the young people are saying to us about what's possible. And maybe we change our minds as the maybe senior advisors we might be. And those who are listening to this who are in that youth guard that's coming up, that's demanding a different world right now, I hear you. I hear you. And your idea that it is possible now is a powerful idea. And I thank you for sharing it. And I offer myself willing to lead from that possibility. And I know you will too.
Thank you so much, Reverend Christie. You can find Reverend Christie at inspirationgatherings.org. And speaking of leaders, please welcome Reverend Jon Scott.
Hello, everyone. Oh my gosh, thank you for the invitation. I'm very honored. And wow, I'm sitting here high on what's already been said. It's so great. And when you asked me about being on here, it was interesting because I'm in the process of doing a teaching every Wednesday evening on the Tao Te Ching. And so this evening, our chapter opened with these lines: do you think you can make the world better? I don't think you can. And the idea around that is to practice non-interference and to get to the place where we don't need things to be our way, that the world is not Burger King, that we are in a constant state of honoring people's space where they are. I was raised in fundamentalist Christianity where the devil was after your God and you couldn't figure it out until you got to church that week, which one was going to be after you. And so I was raised with this daddy complex, but it was not my earth father. It was this heavenly father who was out to get me. And I think that has affected and infected the soul of humanity. And so I'm asking myself this question with whatever I bring forward: am I affecting the world for the better, or am I infecting the world? And so I asked myself to be in the space with compassion. And so I wrote a couple of things down that I just this afternoon after Reverend Temple, after we talked, and it was this: compassion is the highest signature of a higher consciousness. And holding my peace of God lightly allows me into the depths of true peace. And this idea came: if I hold onto my peace of God, I might end up not having room to have the peace of God, of the divine nature that passes all understanding. I don't think we see the world as it is. I think we see it as we are. You know, TJ mentioned that. To me, my perception directly affects my conception, and whatever is conceived in the womb of my being will be birthed into the world. And so one of the best ways for me to help bring peace into the world is to not try to change the world around me, but it's to allow change to happen inside of me. The more peaceful I become, the more loving I become, the world gets a little more peaceful and a little more loving. And so this inner work, you know, the idea of understanding that if I don't go within, I'll always go without. That is something that we can help to encourage across the board. And then realizing that I'm not here to teach anyone anything. The best I can really ever hope to do is to keep the mirror shined so that they can see themselves. Because the truth is always within. Jesus, the master, said the kingdom or the king's domain, the authority of God is within. It's always within. And one of the things I've noticed is that the people who become the most violent are people who simply don't know their power. And so how can we find a way to empower and to express the presence that really brings peace? I mean, peace is absolutely a value of mine. And it's a place where I meditate. If we meditate on peace and we meditate on love, we won't have to medicate because of violence. And in many ways, that's what we've been doing. We've been medicating to recover from a violent activity. And honestly, most of us were probably conditioned about a God who's violent one moment and loves you the next, and it depends on your performance. And so many of us have been, sort of trying to satiate this ogre bipolar God who, when this God gets to heaven, he's probably, when we get to heaven, this God's probably going to need Dr. Phil to give him some anger management classes. And once we shift away from that, and then the shift hits the fan, holy shift, then it gets flung everywhere. We're seeing that happen in the world right now as we're seeing religion lose, really in many ways, lose its hold. And what I mean is I'm talking about ancient religion that looks at God as, sort of this angry white guy in the sky. I know that everyone who pretty much is in this room has graduated past that. But I believe that there are many others, 2.4 billion people who claim to be followers of this Jesus figure that was taught to us, basically took the punch in the forehead so that we wouldn't have to get it, died for us so that God wouldn't be mad at us. And so when I thought about nonviolence, I thought, man, if 2.4 billion people are affected or infected, depending on what part of the religion they're in, by this idea, it's no wonder there is a large issue with violence in the world. Because if you believe that God is angry, if you believe that God is mad, well, then you have the right to be as well. And so then I also thought, there are people who are often uninterested in what we have to say because they don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. And so how can I return to a space of compassion? And I do that by going inside. How much do I love me? How at peace with me am I? And so I am answering the invitation along with all of you wonderful people to go within constantly. In fact, all the time. In fact, I don't know. I'm not certain that we love anyone else. I think we actually learn to love us. And that projects out, as was mentioned about the frequency. When you were talking about radio, TJ, I was like remembering riding down the road in my dad's old Buick LeSabre. We didn't have seat belts in the back because you could crawl up in the back window, really, and eat a bucket of chicken while you're on the way to church. But I remember my dad, he would have to constantly change the radio to catch frequency. And how frequently are we willing to shift our own station so that we simply tune in what is already in the quantum field? It's already there. And then how do we encourage others? You're never alone. You never can run out of it. It is the peace that passes our intellectual understanding, and invite people constantly to love you, love you. If we will teach our children that, the whole next generation will, instead of being infected, be affected, and will change the whole planet.
You see that? You hear that? Woo! Reverend Jon Scott, how can people stay in touch with you? I know you have the love movement, the One Love. Tell us about you, how we can find you.
Just look for Heretics Wanted at the post office. No, but no, you can go to iamonelove.com. That's the movement you just mentioned. It's the One Love Consciousness movement. iamonelove.com. And in big part because of you, I am in St. Petersburg, Florida, at First Unity Spiritual Campus, and you can go to firstunity.org. And thank you, Reverend Dr. Temple, for trusting me to carry on your great work in St. Petersburg.
You are a blessing, and in many ways, my friend, you will exceed me. That's what I know. God bless you, and thank you for being here. When Reverend Dr. Steve and I were talking about creating this space of these 2 hours, along with Mindy's input, I was telling him about often, like we were talking about, Reverend Christie was mentioning how sometimes in New Thought we create little clique groups and we all hang out together, and isn't that wonderful? But it's how to exceed and go into other countries and see people that are expressing New Thought, global peace, and they're doing it in their own way, though they may not consider themselves affiliated with any particular organization. So I was telling Reverend Dr. Steve about the power of Patraji, who many years ago in India had the idea of teaching people to be plant protein, to be free of any animal, and to meditate. He reached millions and millions in his lifetime. He was going to be with us, and oddly enough, he made his transition almost 2 weeks ago today. His daughter, Pari, who visits California and Florida frequently, perhaps will be moving to California, will be taking the helm, taking the baton of his work. Welcome the story of the beloved, amazing, life-changing Patraji.
Brahmarshi Subhash Patriji, the founder for Pyramid Spiritual Society's movement, was a tireless spiritual warrior who had relentlessly propagated the science of meditation, vegetarianism, and pyramid energy for many decades, inspiring millions of people to become meditators and vegetarians. Due to this continuous efforts of making people aware about vegetarianism, many animals are saved and breathing life on earth today. He organized numerous vegetarian rallies to make everyone aware of the uniqueness living a life of non-violence by being a vegetarian. He had traveled around 40 countries and taught meditation to lakhs of people without charging a single pie. He always had the courage to speak the truth on the face. He himself said on one occasion that he had personally met at least 4 crore people as part of the meditation campaign. This is not a simple matter, seems humanly impossible and miraculous. Generally, we find some special methods in spiritual gurus. There are many things like waking up early in the morning, practicing meditation, doing yoga, giving darshans to devotees or disciples, and maintaining a physical distance. But Patraji's style was completely different. He had no special attire. He was an extraordinary guru who did not accept any special pitas, did not accept any special manners, and mingled with everyone and lived a simple life like a common man. He founded the Pyramid Spiritual Society's movement and took meditation to the level of a mega movement. He is not like an ashram dweller, but like a revolutionary. He worked day and night for the spiritual progress of humanity. He is a Para Bhagirata who dedicated his life completely to take meditation to every person simply by saying, "Observe your breath," and made the gangs of wisdom flow into people's life. Patriji went personally to the homes of several thousand meditators. He joined them like a spiritual family member and showed what a Vasudeva Kutumbakam is. He was an embodiment of compassion who always embraced everyone without any discrimination and lived with everyone as one amongst them. And when it comes to the daily routine of this great man, he used to drink a cup of coffee in the morning and then get ready and go to the meditation class. After teaching meditation, he would travel from one town to another town just teaching meditation. Whether it was one person or lakhs of people, the meditation was taught with the same intensity and commitment. Again, after dinner, Patriji used to travel to another town. He used to spend the whole day in meditation classes and travel and spend the whole night editing magazines or books related to meditation or traveling to another place. Patriji met personally hundreds or thousands of people every day. In whomever house he stayed, he himself would cook for all those who came there, serve everyone by his hand, and would have his meal only after everyone had eaten. It is very rare for people to travel as much as Patriji did. He traveled several lakh kilometers in the country and abroad for teaching meditation. He never thought he was just a physical body. He was always aware that he is an unlimited consciousness, not just limited to the body. He used to teach the same. He believed and propagated the theory of no doctor, no medicine. Patriji told the world that all kinds of diseases can be healed through meditation. A few 100,000 pyramid masters have healed their ailments by practicing meditation and devoted their lives to the propagation of meditation. Recently, after Brahmarshi Pitamaha Patriji left his physical body, there were many questions and doubts among many people.
I'm Nick Nimmin, and I'm a StreamYard user. For the last 6 years, I've been live streaming.
I'm going to make a bold statement and say that doing a TEDx talk is going to be the most transformative and uplifting experience.
There is a misconception among people that yogis are so powerful that they live longer than others due to their practice. Many great souls like Swami Vivekananda, Adi Shankaracharya, Swami Narayan, Jesus Christ, and many others left their bodies at a young age. The question may arise that why didn't they live for long by their yogic energy? The point is, they come to earth with a purpose. They complete their purpose and leave. Many great gurus like Ramana Maharshi, Malayalam Swami, Yogananda Paramahansa, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Satya Sai Baba renounced the physical body in their last days due to some illness after serving their purpose. Many people may wonder, they are the Mahatmas who have conquered karma, saved many people from many dangers and even saved their lives, and why are they suffering from diseases? Gurus also take the karmas of some disciples and experience the disciples' karmas in their own bodies because they know the truth, I am not the body. Why do those gurus who think that I am not the body spend their yogic energy to heal their own body? They spend all their energy for the well-being and prosperity of the world. Also, while the great Mahatmas are independent for their individual karmas because they accept the burden of collective karma of humanity. Many Mahayogis experience physical body ailments, including Patriji. He had made millions of masters like him in his journey, and now, to further the spiritual movement through all of them, to expand this consciousness further in a new role, for yet another journey, for another beginning. Brahmarshi Pitamaha Patriji, who has been the guide, friend, teacher, and inspiration for all of us, has now traveled to the higher worlds, to the place from where he had come from. The entire Pyramid Spiritual Society is dwelling in gratitude. The spiritual world is admiring. The animal world is showering its blessings. Your inspiration, your vision, your good intentions shall spread across the globe. Jaya Ho Patriji, Jaya Jaya Ho Patriji.
Jaya Jaya, the beloved Patriji, in his life, they created 20,000 pyramids in India and have moved another part of their organization into the United States. You can go to pssmovement.org. That's Pyramid Spiritual Society Movement.org. Just incredible work and a true difference maker. Speaking of difference maker, talking about behind the camera today, Miss Fire here is our beloved Mendhi Audlin. Mendhi, welcome. I'm just so glad you're here. As I was putting all this together, I mean, many of you know that we all have many gifts and they can be different. And when we're putting all this together and all this detail and minutia, I'm like, and Mendhi is one of my prayer partners. We talk every month. She's the original founder of the Unity Online Radio, BAM, and has created all different kind of things, in her life. And I just love and adore you. And I'm so grateful for your presence and your behind the scenes today. Thank you, Mendhi.
Well, Temple, I want to just begin by acknowledging you for this incredible gathering of amazing light beings. I have just been soaking up every single minute of it. And I know that it is your heart that has brought us all together here. And I want to thank you because it is no small feat bringing all of this together. And you've just done such a beautiful job. So thank you so much for the opportunity to come together.
No, thank you, Mendhi. Well, tell us about your work. You have been passionate for at least the last 10 to 15 years that I've known you, trailblazing about the power of spirit groups and people gathering together in like-mindedness.
Well, I've just been loving hearing. I've heard a lot of speakers that I've known about for a long time, but I've never heard you speak before. And TJ, when we talked about not the law of attraction, but the law of, the law of radiance. And it made me think back to my early days. I was in college radio. And as, when I was back in college, I ran the college radio station. And one of my jobs every morning, get up at, 5:30 in the morning, and I would turn on the tower. And so as we talk about law of attraction and how we tune into a frequency, my job was to activate that frequency that people could tune into. And I've always heard the law of attraction is what is the frequency that you're tuning into, but I've never thought of it in terms of what am I radiating out into the world? Because the truth is, once I turned that tower on, nothing happened until I hit play on something, until I turned on the microphone. It doesn't matter what the frequency is. The question is, what do we choose to put into that frequency? And so we're coming together in this frequency of love and this frequency of light. And I love the awareness that that is where the journey begins. And I also have a very deep passion for knowing that that is not the end of the journey, that that is the beginning, just like we breathe in, that there is also with every inhale, there is an exhale, and there is the inner process of fueling and finding and discovering the love and the light within us, forgiving and all these wonderful things we've talked about. And once we're full, the natural thing to do is to release that breath into the world, to give that love and give that light. And I love the idea that I am one and you are one, but the 1 + 1 still equals 1. That's the paradox. There's so much paradox in this. So I'm just having light bulb moments all the time. I'm having such a great time connecting with all of you and learning from all of you. I love the idea, seeing the AG&T history. This is a grassroots movement. And I have been blessed to work with PSSM, the Pyramid Society, and Pari as they bring that work into the United States. What a beautiful testimony, what a beautiful tribute to her father. And I love how she said, they come to earth with a purpose. And I believe that is true for all of us. We come to this lifetime with a purpose. And so we heal ourselves so that we are full to give of that purpose. What do we choose to hit play? What do we choose to feed into the frequency that we are aligning with? And that is the heart of the work that I have been doing now for decades. Interestingly, Unity Radio was one of my projects. But for the past 10 years, I've been working specifically with New Thought communities in identifying what is that mission, what is that purpose, what is it that we want to hit play into the universe and attract those that are of like mind. We have to give it some form so that those who are of like mind can find us. And then once we've identified that mission, how do we empower our colleagues to have those, to attract those people who are of like mind, and then to cultivate those who find us wherever they may be, whatever frequency may have brought them in. And I know for me, when I first came into a New Thought church, I was not all smiles and sunshine when I first walked in the door. I was a hot mess. My life was falling apart, divorce and all those horrible things. I had just, my life bottomed out. And when I found a New Thought church, I came into a community where there was a frequency that I wanted, that I wasn't feeling, but I wanted it. And when I stepped into that spiritual home, that spiritual community, I felt myself embraced in something that lifted me up to a level where I could see something in myself that I didn't even know was possible. I didn't even know was possible, but I became aware of it because of the energy that was in that community. So I go back to Charles Fillmore back in the 1920s when he was launching New Thought Centers for the first time, and everyone came back to Papa Charles and said, hey, did you know what they're doing over here? Because it's not what you're doing over here, and it's not what you're doing over here, and it's not what you're doing over here. So he wrote this document back in 1920 saying, this is what a New Thought Truth Center should be. And one of the things he said is that it's important for us to begin with a clear purpose, to know what is it that when we hit play, what is it that we want to broadcast out into the world? What is our purpose here? And to get clear on that, he said, and this is Charles Fillmore's words, he said, the highest service is to help another to obtain a clearer realization that the working power of God is in every person. So when he would create a center, that's what it was about. It is making sure that every person that is attracted into that community knows that the working power of God is in you and in me and in us. So what can we do together? And in order to fulfill that purpose, he says, you have to realize that people go through, he talked about 5 different specific stages of consciousness. And I love thinking about this in my own life because I find myself in the ebb and flow of this. As spiritual leaders, as those of us on the forefront of the New Thought movement, it's important for us to know these stages as well so that we can support people in moving through their journey. So just like a very quick overview of what he said. He said, we come in as explorers. We come in just seeking. And the very fact that we're seeking truth means that we've taken the first step. So, you know, are you out there looking for that community, or are you a spiritual leader and knowing that there are people who are seeking you? How do you put yourself out there so they can easily find you? And then once we find that community, how do we step into it? How do we show up for that small group? How do we show up for that Sunday service? Who invites us in and makes us feel welcome so that we want to stay and we want to engage? And that's the third step. You know, you find your community, like, give me more. You know that? I know when I found that New Thought Church, I was first Sunday crying. Next Sunday, crying. And then I was just like, every class I could take, I'm just a sponge. I want to take it all in. And then he says, the next step is, I have all my little cheat sheets. The next step is to be able to take these ideas and express them into the world. So it's not just in my head, it's in my feet, it's in my hands, I'm living it. And beyond that, the final stage is that we are leaders. I call it the encourage step. It's when we step into the knowing and the living of these principles in such a way that we can't help but want to teach others the same thing. And as spiritual leaders, if we can guide people through the spiritual path, this spiritual path of discovery, even as it is an individual journey, how can we hold the space for that so that the people that come into our community are inspired to want to lead the change, to join us in the mission? So it's not one person in a pulpit making the change. It's a community that is mission focused, mission driven, creating amazing things in the world. So that's my purpose. That is my passion. And I am so blessed and grateful to have had this opportunity to share it and to be here with this amazing group. So thank you so much, Temple.
Oh, you're a blessing and a gift, and just all that you are. And I'm so grateful that you agreed to be part of this and to make everything run so seamless. As everyone has been sharing, I remembered a quote that I wrote years ago that's still very true today. Be original, for originality leads to confidence. Confidence leads to self-esteem. Self-esteem leads to inclusiveness, and inclusiveness leads to peace. And that has been kind of the thread within every person in song and voice and in heart, is that underlying message is that when I am comfortable with myself, the core is well. All is well in my soul. not talking psychology, not talking personality, because, you know, that just goes in all different kind of directions. But there is a knowing, beyond a brain knowing, but an inner knowing that all is well. And there is such tremendous power with that. I remember years ago when I was with my shaman teacher and we would do weekend retreats. And, you know, I had been with her, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And unlike these little weekend certificates people give away today, she wasn't going to let me get out easy. It's like, no, 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 you still need to go to training. And so I went into the underworld, which is a deep meditation, to look for what archetype did I need to guide me through life and to be grounded. And I'm in the underworld, I'm on my horse, I'm going on this journey and going through cemeteries, which is very common that you do this. And I discovered the Eiffel Tower. And I went, oh, no way. And as I'm regrouping, coming back, I went, oh no, she's going to make fun of me. I'm going to tell her it's glitzy. You know, she's expecting a big rock or a boulder. And no, I'm going to say, mine is the Eiffel Tower. And so as I did, she really surprised me. And she went, you know, talk about it more. And I said, well, you know, it is true. The Eiffel Tower has 4 legs. So it would be emotional, mental, right? Spiritual, physical. So when we are balanced in that area, we do have, as TJ said, that more of that higher frequency. Didn't say we perfected all those areas at the same time, but when there is the intention of balance. And on that particular weekend, some of you may remember, TJ, when you said some of you might remember the radio, I went, oh my gosh, we're moving along. But some of you may remember the Parade magazine that would come back and actually come to a newspaper and it be delivered to your driveway. And for those of you that don't remember, let's just say we're happy for you. But that being said, that Parade magazine on that very weekend, on that weekend that I went into the underworld reality, I opened it up and it said, all the psychics in the world are gathered this weekend in Paris underneath the Eiffel Tower, because they state very clearly that the signal is the strongest there in all of the world. So what we know for sure is you don't need to go to the Eiffel Tower. I mean, you certainly can, and that's a ton of fun. But you can just hold within your own awareness a consciousness and ground within the emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical being. And because of all the brilliant leaders and teachers today, you have a ton of resources which have been offered to you of different websites and communities. You can go to agnt.today. And there is so much of a library for all of you, nature programs, Season for Nonviolence, climate change, gun revolution, ending many different situations. There's all this kind of literature that's at your beck and call. And it's available to us to continue to work with that unraveling and that indwelling energy of what is yet to be. And it's just so very exciting to live on this planet today and to be part of it, because as we know, we were all called at this particular time, and it is our time, and now is the place, and we are in it together. I know when I've seen all these people here today, I can trust and sit back and know my core of all being well with my soul when I think about all these great minds that are making a difference in the world. And I really salute you. And we are fortunate. We're going to end in just a few minutes with another song by Stowe about peace. But we are fortunate that we have Reverend Dr. Steve with us. Would you like to say a couple of words? It's been a pleasure having you with us.
Well, Temple, over 30 years I've been in New Thought, and you've made me proud.
Oh, oh,
Thank you. Thank you for each of the speakers. The energy, you know, the thing that I was most afraid of when I created this week of 40 different presentations is that you would sit in and listen and be bored. Not here. Not here. Thank you all.
Every one of these individuals gives so many, many gifts. And we've recorded this because we knew that many of you would listen to this at another time and perhaps more than one occasion. Follow these great luminaries, know what they are doing, and discover more about the core within yourself. And so it's been a pleasure. And we're going to close out with a song from Stowe about peace, and you can visit them at Stowegood, STOWE, stowegood.com.
Help bring you back to center. Are you like us? Are you kind of out there, you know, I mean, with what's going on in the world?
It's very unsettling.
It is.
Yeah.
And this song was born on a morning when we felt unsettled, and our prayer was, bring me back to center. And we just let that settle on us, and this song came into being. So, you know, today we'd like to just invite you to take a moment, take a breath, and let yourself come back to center.
And if you are hearing Spanish words on this, just know that they were translated for us into Spanish by the wonderful, amazing Reverend Coco Ramos. We love and miss you.
Hoy yo vuelvo al centro, mi paz fluye ya, se rinde mi alma, solo siento paz. Bring me back to center, bring me back to flow. Now my soul surrenders, peace is all I know. Solo siento paz, solo siento paz. Hoy y siempre sano soy, solo siento paz. Bring me back to knowing peace is letting go. Love is overflowing. Peace is all I know. Peace is all I know. Peace is all I know. In this moment I am home. Peace is all I know. God. Peace is all I know. Peace is all I know. In this moment I am home. Peace is all I know. Hoy y siempre sano soy. Peace is all I know.
What a blessing, and all of you amazing souls. And as you're watching this later on its recorded essence, please share it with others and let people know that there are many of us that are dedicated to knowing the world is as we see it. And as we see it is the way we hold it, a place of peace. God bless you on this amazing journey that we are. Thank you, Mendhi Audlin. Thank you, all of my beloved colleagues, my esteemed truth teachers. So grateful. And thank you, Reverend Dr. Steve, for creating this amazing window, this Interfaith Awareness Week. And so it is. God bless you.
It is. Thank you.